Okay, so let's go to the second part and talk a little bit about morals and ethics, because it looks like this is the magic pixie dust we can use to solve maybe the problem. And I need to bother you with some more definitions, but it's the last time. So I hope we are okay, but it is important. It's not only because of my profession and I like semantics, and especially in English, it's not so easy for me either. But I think it's necessary because it contributes or not to our problem. So let's start with morals. Morals is a set of the socially learned, largely unconscious values and rules of right conduct in any community. When an individual violates this moral code, he feels guilt, the pangs of conscience. Moral codes tend to be specific and situational. And you see, this is an old school definition, because nowadays people talk only about moral without the S, but morals, I think it covers it best, at least for me. So it's largely unconscious values and rules. So it's not necessarily something you can explain. And if you cannot explain it, you cannot code it. Also, the fields of guilt, which is more from the psychological definition of moral, less than from the philosophical definition. But I think this is a crucial thing, because can a system really feel guilt? Does it have something like a conscience? Can you program it? And even if so, it's not always specific, it's situational, so it can change. So if we just use this definition, we will never end up with an artificial intelligence which can act also morally. And even if so, it could also act morally, which might be then different when we expect it, because it's following its own morality. And I already used the word morality, which is actually not the same as morals, because morality denotes a body of accepted and sanctioned conduct in a community. It includes moral judgments like right and wrong. And this could help us a bit more, because right and wrong, 1, 0, this is something you can easily code if the community agrees on everything which is right and wrong. And then, of course, you can sanction it also in the algorithm. So morality is something we can do when we come up with common sense regarding what is right and what is wrong. I'm not sure whether we can ever achieve this either. So third one and last one, and then we're really done with definitions, is ethics. Because usually people don't talk that much about moral of AI, or in AI we talk about ethics. But this is really helpful. What is ethics? At least in my understanding, ethics is the philosophical reflection of morals and morality. It tries to formulate the theoretic principles lying in or behind the evaluation of the conduct, but it's not supposed to regulate it. And ethics also tries to identify what life is good life and what is not, and if there's something like the highest good in life. So taking the first part, it's just a reflection about the principles of morals and morality. So if there is no morals in AI, there cannot be an ethics in AI either. This would be a very tough or strict definition, but it shows that the system is not, or that ethics is not really supposed to regulate something. This has to be done on the level of morality. And if there is something like the highest good in life of a machine, of an artificial intelligence, I also doubt. It would be, coming back to our first definition of intelligence, then it could be something interesting that ethics would reflect on what is an objective or a good objective, and what is the right or the wrong thing to do. So in this regard, it can help us a little, but less when we usually think. So usually we should talk about morals of AI and discuss whether this is possible or not, and what would be a good moral or not, rather than ethics. But it's not that big a deal. It's, as I said, semantics maybe, but to clarify it at least a bit might help. And that leads me to the second problem, the bigger one most likely, that when we talk about this, we usually talk about the morals or the ethics. Like there is one ethics, and then everything is done. The problem is that there are several different morals and ethics on both individual and scientific levels, with no universal values and no common sense about what is right and what is wrong. And I want to try to prove this with a little example, which can also be used for an algorithm to decide on, but of course it's not yet. So it is the situation of a medical doctor, and she has a cancer patient who is a famous, successful book author and about to die. And most likely even before he can finish his final book, which he wanted to finish so badly. So a very bad situation, but not that theoretical. So she's thinking now about telling the author the truth or not. And derived from this situation, you can come up with 4 different scenarios with different intentions, actions, and results reflecting 3 important ethical theories. Meaning that if you judge a case from a moral point of view, you can focus either way on the intention, on the action, or on the results, and derive from that you come up with potential solutions. So let's take these 3. Let's focus on the attitude or the intention of the medical doctor, the action of the medical doctor, and the effects or consequences for the patient. So what is the first scenario? The first scenario would be there is a negative intention, there is antipathy, she is envious, she studied for years and has a decent salary, but not that much. And then there is this author coming up with weird stories and getting millions, and it's not really, she does not really understand why he can be this successful. She doesn't like him. And she's saying, okay, I'm a good person. I'm raised to be honest. I will tell him the truth that he will die, that he will die soon. So what's the consequence for the patient? He will probably not even start to finish his book. He will always think about his forthcoming death, and he will not finish the book and will die unhappy. She could also say, I don't like this guy, so I will not tell him the truth. He will die and he will find out early enough. So she will start lying. But then the author might think, okay, I still have time. He will start working on his book. He may even finish his book and he will die happy. Let's assume she is not so negative, she's positive. She says, he is really a good author. I have read 3 books myself. He cheered up my day. It was really good. I like him. I like this guy. But I'm also a good medical doctor, so I have to tell him the truth because I was raised this way. This is my value, universal value, if you want so, to tell the truth. And we already know the result. The author will most likely die unhappy. Or she can say, okay, I'm positive. I like this guy. I want to help him. I don't want to see him dying unhappy. So I will change my action. I will lie, although I know that's the wrong thing to do. But I have a nice result. He will finish his book and will die happy. So can you tell me what's ethically right and what's ethically wrong, or morally right and morally wrong? I don't think so. I think a lot of these scenarios are plausible, and we will probably not all agree on what is right and what is wrong. And this is the problem we have with ethics. Even if we would have run an artificial intelligence system through this scenario, it wouldn't really come up with a solution which is really good. And derived from this, we have 3 branches of ethics theory. We are derived from the attitude, the action, and the consequences. And there are a lot of scientists who are dealing with this. I just briefly want to introduce them. If you focus more on the attitude and the intention of the person, we call it the ethics of character, the virtue ethics, and this is basically derived from Aristotle. And there, the moral judgment is based on virtuous acting as a result of wisdom and character, reason and emotion. So a balance in your character. You want to do the good thing. You have the wisdom to know what's right and wrong. You have a good character. And you use also reason, but also emotion. So wisdom and reason, something we might achieve with an artificial intelligence. Character and emotion, I doubt it. So where other people saying, okay, it's the action, it's not the intention. You can have all the good intentions of the world, but it doesn't really make the world a better place necessarily. So it's the action which counts. And this is the so-called ethics of duty from Immanuel Kant as a representative for the deontological ethics. And it means moral judgment is based on the obedience to unconditional moral rules. For example, the categorical imperative, meaning you must not lie, period, no matter what. Yeah? So if you follow this ethics, it would be pretty clear that no matter what, the medical doctor has to tell the truth, no matter of the consequences. Something not everybody will buy in. So a lot of people say, and mostly business people also, of course, it's the ethics of outcome. We have a lot of branches, teleological, consequentialist, utilitarian ethics, whatnot. And they say that moral judgment is based on the outcomes relating to the greatest amount of good for the greatest amount of people. So the end justifies the means. And this is discussed a lot. A lot of people say, yeah, why not? But we cannot use this only, or we cannot only use this because this would justify then everything. So you see, these are just 3 areas of ethics research or ethics theories, and there are much more. So to talk about the ethics or the morals of AI, what does it mean? Is it the ethics of character, the ethics of duty, the ethics of outcome, or the ethics of discussion? And there are a lot of other ones. So it's a misleading term. It's like you put some ethics in it and then it will work. But tell me which one, which ethics will help us solving the problems. So key takeaways from here. An AI system lacks morals, and as it lacks a conscience and the feeling of guilt, you cannot really use it. They are not really codable, and they are individual and situational. So how can you code something which is situational and you don't know the situation and it has to do with your feelings? I think not really possible. Very important, there is no de-ethics or de-morals. There are plenty of them. And accordingly, I don't think that there is an ethics of AI or ethics in AI which is universally solve any ethical problems we might have. And there are also not many universal values. Therefore, morally perfect AI system in one culture could be perceived as an immoral AI system in another culture. And this is something I want to go with you through right now. Obviously, the interactive part, we have to improvise. I want to use this problem of autonomous driving, which is also known in theory as the trolley problem. And there was a really good experiment at the MIT, the so-called moral machine, where you can come up with scenarios and you can show what your moral point of view is. And the situation is as far as you have an autonomous driving situation, you have a self-driving car, the car is running into a situation, the brakes are not working, and the algorithm, the computer, needs to decide what to do. So where's a traffic light and there are pedestrians, where's an elder person crossing from the left to the right, and where's a child crossing the street from the right to the left. What do you decide? Who should die? Because you can either turn left or you can turn right, and you will kill one or the other. So I would like you to go to Menti one more time and tell me your position. I will just rearrange it. Let me quickly do something. It's supposed to be. So I would like you to vote according to your cultural background. So I have 2 parts. I have Asian part and Western part. So you can either spare the young or spare the old. And please vote according to your cultural background. I'm not sure if we have a split in the group, but maybe we do to see the results the way you think.
There seems to be, at least according to the three Westerners, some agreement on who to be spared, but we do have some people that are not Western in our midst as well. There we go.
This was supposed to be so cool in the presentation, and it worked all the days I tried it. I really hate computers, but that's another story.
You picked an interesting field to talk about.
Yes. I shouldn't have updated everything this morning and reloaded. Okay, now even the audience is failing me because the results are not really as they are supposed to be. But that's okay. No, that's not okay. No, it's not. Stop it. Okay, so, but maybe it also shows that a culture is changing. I want to show you the results. As they usually come, derived from this experiment. Of course, it's not representative, it's just online, and just with people who had an interest in it. But if you analyze those, you will usually see that the more individualistic cultures, the Western cultures, are more likely to spare the young, and the Asian cultures usually, or people from Asian cultures, spare the elder one. So it's a pretty huge difference. In our case, it didn't work. You all wanted to save the young ones, which of course is nice. But usually if you take the results from this study, a majority of people from Asian cultures vote for sparing the elder one. And this is interesting because what would be the result? And it comes back to what I said, the social context is important when you program a system. Yeah? Let's say for example, I have a Hyundai, and I would get a new Hyundai as a self-driving car programmed in Korea, and I come into a situation like this, and then I would kill the elder one, although I would like to save the young one. And if you in Korea would drive a Volkswagen, it might be the other way around. So how do you program such a system? And you can play this with very different situations. For example, it looks the same if it's about how many people. Is it every life is counting the same? Or would you say to save 3 people is better to save than to save just 1 person? And you have more or less the same pattern here, that people from individualistic cultures are more likely to spare more lives than just 1 life, although from our ethical values, which say every life is the same. So yeah, you shouldn't balance this. And nevertheless, we do. And I think this shows a little bit the tricky part of it, that whatever ethics you will apply here, whether it's the ethics of outcome or the intention or the action, it does not really help you, because it's also the culture, it's the individual setup you have, and it's situational. Yeah? Maybe if you are in this situation, you will also act differently. So this, I think, shows a little bit the problems we may face when we think that just because we add some ethics or some morals to a problem, that we will find a solution when it comes to situation like this. Of course, there are much bigger problems than that. Let's take this one. Let's take the situation of Palestine and Israel. So is it really that we are lacking proposals on how to solve the situation? Or is it just that we first have a different perception of the reasons for this problem? And even if we come up with a perfect, rational solution, let's say it will be 2 states, Jerusalem as the capital of both countries and whatnot, does it help us? In any case, probably not, because people will not accept it. It's something what people will not agree to, at least not enough people. Or take this one, climate change. People do not necessarily agree what's causing the climate change. Is it something which happens anyway? Is it something man-made, or is it something in the middle that we contribute to it, but not at the degree people say? A reasonable, rational solution would be to cut the amount of people living on this planet in half, because it would solve a lot of problems. I don't think that the half who is concerned will agree to this. The other might be, but not necessarily. So we can come up with every solution, or with any solution which might solve our potential problems, but it's not necessarily something which can help us. So the question is, if it's not possible, what is the AI hype all about? Because it's somehow promoted like this is the thing, the next thing, which help us solving all our problems. And I have at least some doubts, which I hope I could explain with these examples. So what are my conclusions on this? AI can help us in solving problems by increasing the number of potential solutions based on rationality, based on logic. But AI cannot help us in deciding what the problem is and which solution is right or wrong, and which one will be acceptable to the people concerned. It's always a human who defines what the problem is, and it always should be, I think at least, a human who takes the final decision, which is very important. We also might be able to define specific ethical criteria, and we might even be able to program rules derived from a certain morality, right or wrong, but an AI system will always lack morals and the respective feeling of guilt when violating them in a given situation. We all, I think we know that if you are in the army, you follow orders, but we also say that you have the right to reject an order if it's against your conscience. But a system would never do this because it doesn't have a conscience. You could pre-program it, but then you already know the situation and you could avoid the situation, but this needs to work for unknown situations. So AI is a powerful tool, as is nuclear power. It can help or destroy humanity. Therefore, let's use it wisely and carefully. And I want to finish with a quotation I like a lot. Especially, I think most of you will somehow be bothered by consultants, media society saying that AI is the next thing and you have to do this is the logical next step in human development, and you cannot really argue against it. And I like the quotation from an old movie, and I'm not raised by the internet, I'm still raised by TV. And the movie is The Judgment at Nuremberg. It's a very old movie, and inspired by the US Nuremberg Military Tribunal in 1947 in Germany, where the American Judge Haywood, played by Spencer Tracy, said to a German defense lawyer or defense attorney, Herr Rolfe, which is his name, I have admired your work in the court for many months. You are particularly brilliant in your use of logic. So what you suggest may very well happen. It is logical in few of the times in which we live. But to be logical is not to be right, and nothing on God's earth could ever make it right. And that's it from my side. I thank you for your attention and your patience with the IT system which failed on me. But I hope you could get some inspiration, or I could share some of my thoughts and concerns regarding this topic.
I think it was very, very refreshing, Robert. It was excellent. I haven't seen any questions from the audience at this point, but I think to some extent it might also be, as you indicated, just a couple ideas that are rather spun around. I do see one question coming up now. From Jisuk, it seems that autonomous driving would be still very far. What are your views on this? How will it progress? What might be I would say the first obstacle or the first obstacles that need to be overcome in having this proceed further?
I think the technology is already there. We don't use it because the regulations are still not there. I know that it's discussed in Germany. There is the so-called Ethics Council, and the Ethics Council came up with a proposal which not really is a proposal, because it simply says you are not allowed to discriminate whatsoever. Okay, but every decision is a discrimination. Yeah, so one way or the other, even if you say it's a randomized, it's a discrimination. Yeah, you just let somebody else taking the decision, the programmer. I think it's not discussed at all in public, because they say this is only 0.0001% of cases, and because of this we will not stop the development. So I know that there is some discussion in the community. I think we are talking now about so-called level 2. I think there are 4 levels of autonomous driving defined. So self-parking is okay, and also driving on certain highways is something which will be next, also for trucks. For passenger cars, I'm not sure how far we are regarding the regulation, but it's like digitalization. Everybody's pushing. Yeah? We are pushing because we think we need to do this. I think we have bigger fish to fry. It's not really the next thing. If I look around, fighting COVID, fighting hunger, fighting a lot of things in the world would be more relevant when making the next step in driving. But I know that the car companies are pushing for it. We will see when the first thing happens or is happening, what the public reaction will be. I think regulators are still careful, but I think that regulators are also not really, how to say this, I think this is not really their concern. They are more concerned about some bigger technical things and by the economic effect of this. So I think we will get it sooner or later. I can only hope that we somehow find a way to handle this system. And to maybe give you something, what I think, but sometimes people say, what's your solution on this? I usually come up with 2 proposals. One would be to have a configuration, like you can choose the engine and the color and whatnot. You might choose also the ethical setup to say at least it's Western, it's Eastern, or that you can somehow program some parameters. Yeah? This might be one solution. The other one is a very radical one, which would be applicable to all artificial intelligence system or artificial intelligence-based systems. Because the third scenario I didn't introduce, because you don't see the cultural pattern there. It's you could kill the passenger. You could make the car a hard right and crash a wall, and then all the passengers are dead. And if we would say, okay, in case of an accident or something which is not really clear, always the one who is using voluntarily the system needs to take the consequences, because I choose to drive in such a car. The pedestrian didn't. Yeah? The pedestrian is innocent. So I need to know whenever I use an AI-based system, it's my responsibility and I have to deal with the consequences. And then we will see what the real acceptance rate of this new technology is. And it's not only applicable to driving, it's applicable to many things. Can we really, we as a consumer, but also the company, if we are responsible for the results, will we still go for it? And I think right now we try to skip the consequences and say we will be an insurance, or we will blame it to the algorithm, or we will say it's something we couldn't do. So I think it's about accountability and responsibility of the company and also of the consumer.
Okay, no, I think that's a very fair point. But again, how this is going to be decided and what we're going to see here, that is, and the differences between cultures here, that is a big question, right? I see one last question coming in by Kurt. As you note, AI product developers face the prospect of being second-guessed on the choices they program into their systems. In the car accident scenario, whichever choice they make, they can be sued by the estate of the person killed. Are regulators looking at this problem and the impact it may have on advancement? So are you aware of any regulatory assessments, be it either in Germany or elsewhere?
I know that they are discussing it. I know that there is this guideline from the Ethics Council who is also dealing with the regulatory aspects. But I'm not sure what the situation will be. Whether you can sue the company, probably you can, but I don't know what the consequence will be, whether there is a contract when you buy this car that this is somehow included. The way I understand from the German discussion about regulation, I think you cannot directly do this, although we are much weaker than in the US, because in the US you can sue somebody for millions. That's not going to happen in Germany because of our different legal system. So it wouldn't even have the effect to scare the companies of neglecting and using this technology. So I'm not sure what the real situation is, but I know that it's discussed already.
Well, and again here, I mean, you also pointed out that in addition to the cultural differences, again, also the legal cultural differences can make a big difference in people's decision here, which may not necessarily be then driven by the ethics that the person holds, but very simply looking at their, or the company, at their bank account.
Yeah, definitely.
Now, I am mindful of the fact that it's 5 o'clock in Korea, 9 o'clock in Germany. So I find this fascinating, and I really believe that this would be something where we can have a fireside chat on and fire questions back and forth. As you rightfully pointed out in your introduction, you don't have all the answers, and I think very few of us do. I doubt that any of us do. So what I would like to say is, with this, I would like to end this webinar, but definitely keep you on the, well, I would say on our speaker list, and look at doing something a bit further, because regardless of what we feel, this field, particularly autonomous driving and a couple other things that are driven by AI, are definitely of interest to consumers and companies alike. And I think having your thoughts on further developments, be it in half a year, be it in a year, we'll see, would be very interesting for the audience. So for now, I would like to thank you for your insights.
Thank you for having me.
And it's a great pleasure. Thank you very much. And to you and the audience at home, I would like to, wish you very much, for the people in Korea, a nice evening. For you and the people not from Korea, a good remainder of your day. Stay safe, and I look forward to seeing you at some future editions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.